I'm Dr. Brian Nickel, your cannabis expert for CannabisExpertMD.com. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas today. I've got the pleasure of speaking with Chef Pete the Canna Chef. He's going to tell us a little bit about using cannabis in edible production and how he got to be a chef in the first place. And I think the chef's even going to show us how to produce some of your own recipes today. Chef Pete, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Dr. Nickel. I appreciate you coming out.
Well, Chef Pete, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up here in Little Rock, graduated high school, and just run around the town the whole time. I guess when I first started cooking was, with my grandmother, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. By the time I was in fourth grade, I had started baking bread, different types of bread.
In the fourth grade, you were baking bread already?
I actually had memorized the recipe, so I no longer needed to use the cookbook. And I guess I just made it so often. My teachers and principals growing up were real pleased to get a loaf of mine back in fourth grade, fifth grade. And it's just continued ever since. I started working in restaurants when I was 14, and that carried over to fine dining. I worked at Trios here in town for about 5 years before I went into the service industry. The service industry allowed me to have a lot of one-on-one contact with clients, with their client needs. It was real important that they were happy with their final end result. And I love cutting hair, but I really love to cook. And so I started Chef Pete, the Canna Chef, in 2021. And I've been working with incorporating CBD, CBN, CBG, into my cooking. We're not a recreational state, so I have to stay within limitations. What I'll generally do is go get my medication, which in the form of flour, and I'll bring it home and I will work with that, the different stages. Generally stick with hemp, which has a lot of components and compounds that help us in our everyday world. And I just basically want to take the knowledge that I have and give it to people that are ill or they're searching for some type of relief. Chef Pete, the Canna Chef. I put pictures of things that I cook, things that are next on my list to make, and I just really want to give back to people. Cannabis has been real important in my life. Gosh, I hate to say it saved my life a couple times, but it really has. And I'm not gonna, I don't take that lightly. So I know if I've had relief, I know that other folks are gonna get the same benefit.
We certainly have a passion for cooking. You start out in the fourth grade, and I'm sure Grandma was very influential in teaching you how to do things. When did your interest in cannabis actually begin? You mentioned how it's helped you in your life. When did all that first start, Pete?
Well, the first time that I used cannabis was about the age of 14, probably just a little bit early, but it gave me a relief, and I tend to be someone that's maybe a little bit more anxious. I'm a little bit of an introvert, so those things have kind of stood in my way. But the cannabis has always been a relief. It's I think of it as a health food product that I would get at the health food store. Turmeric and all these other things that are beneficial in our lives. Along with cooking, you have to deal with doses, and sometimes it's a little bit of a guessing game if you don't know the strength of the cannabis flower that you will be using to cook, but I can help you with any of that.
So your initial use of cannabis, you were actually, from when we were talking a little bit earlier, you were kind of almost self-medicating some issues you were having in your teenage years. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, going back to the anxiety and depression, and just not feeling easy. It was before a lot of medications that are out on the market now. Not crazy about taking prescriptions, but it's helped me equally as the cannabis has. And I know, like I said, if it's given me this type of relief, then I know it can help other people. I've seen it, and I truly believe it. I'm a true believer.
Well, many patients who thought they were using cannabis recreationally, especially when they were younger, our generation, really retrospectively, they look back and find out, hey, I've been really self-medicating with cannabis over the years. And was that kind of your transition over into realizing cannabis was a medication? Was when you saw the improvement in symptoms over time?
Well, I really didn't get a good grasp on it. In 2015, I went out to San Francisco to a doctor. Her name was Dr. Hannah Barth, and she really just opened my mind to, this plant is able to fix a lot of things, both long term and short term. There's a lot of information that we don't necessarily have.
So really, it was after you met with the doctor in San Francisco, a cannabis doctor, who kind of showed you that there's a lot more to using cannabis medically than just smoking a little bit of weed now and then. Was it then that you kind of started getting focused in on using cannabis in cooking to achieve specific effects and minimize side effects?
Yeah, I'd say when I was in, I guess it was 10th grade, I was 16, and I made my first batch of brownies. And so back then, we used to call it ditchweed, which was generally the best thing and only thing that we could get. And so I would take that product and I mixed it up with the brownie recipe, and I baked it, and then I immediately froze them in the deep freezer so my parents wouldn't find them. But a batch of brownies would last a little while. But like I said, with technology, we've found out that, take terpenes for example. That's the flavor and the smell of a particular cannabis strain. I truly believe we're going to be going recreational, soon. I personally, one of the things I want to do is own a cannabis cafe, where you can come in and tell us, not only what you're hungry for, but kind of what you're, do you want to feel like you have a buzz? Do you want to microdose and just not be able to feel anything?
Well, Chef Pete, one of the things that you kind of brought up several times here, that it's at the right mix of the different cannabinoids and terpenes. That's what actually comes to the effect. So I guess you're a very strong entourage effect guy, it sounds like.
I am. I do want to gain more knowledge with the whole plant matter. We're looking at the root system now. That's not really anything that we've ever looked at. And there's a lot of healthy benefits in the rooting system of the cannabis plant.
Like the cannabinoids. Those in particular have a lot of anti-inflammatory effects to them. I do believe they add significantly to the entourage effect, mostly located in the roots that unfortunately are kind of discarded at this point in time. Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say, one of the things that we deal with all the time are a lot of the stigmas against cannabis. The edible route of administration, I do think that a lot of people do find that a little bit more familiar, maybe a little bit more palatable than other routes of administration, such as smoking and tinctures. Do you think that the incorporation of cannabis as a medication into edibles may bring in some more of those patients that may hold their own stigmas and prejudice against cannabis into it?
Well, we are here in Arkansas, we are in the Bible Belt, and a lot of people won't use cannabis because, they're afraid that it doesn't line up with what they believe. And unfortunately, it's really sad because, I'm not saying everybody needs to use cannabis, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to get high off cannabis, but the benefits are just coming at us each week, and exciting times. It's really exciting times. But going back to when you cook with it, there's a difference between smoking and eating. The eating tends to the effects last a lot longer. They tend to be a little more intense, you know. So generally, like if you go to dispensary, you can buy 100 milligram gummy bears, and there'll be 10, and obviously they're 10 milligrams each. So generally, 5 milligrams is where I kind of like to start people.
Well, the form of THC most patients are familiar with from smoking cannabis is Delta-9 THC. That's the same THC that Chef Pete's producing to put into his edibles. When you consume Delta-9 THC and it is absorbed in your stomach, or in your intestines, I should say, the first stop after gut absorption is the liver to detoxify things. In the liver, Delta-9 THC is metabolized to different forms. One of them is 11-hydroxy-THC, and that's the form that Chef Pete is speaking of that's much more potent and longer lasting. The issues with cannabinoids, as we've talked about before, Chef, with them not being water soluble, means that very oftentimes if you have a 10 milligram gummy bear from a dispensary, most of that Delta-9 THC stays in your GI tract, comes right out your backside. You consume that same amount of Delta-9 THC with an appreciable amount of fat. The Delta-9 combines with the fats and lipids in the meal. Much more is absorbed from the intestine, where it is transported to the liver. That's where Delta-9 gets metabolized to the 11-hydroxy-THC variant. That's a lot more potent and a lot longer lasting. That is one of the reasons the edibles can be kind of hard to predict as to when they're going to kick in, how hard they're going to hit you, and how long they're going to last. I will say, Chef, I do have patients with high THC requirements, some cancer patients in particular I can think of offhand. For them, if they're trying to achieve the levels that are necessary to treat their symptoms, it gets very expensive purchasing edibles at a dispensary. The same thing for other patients, very long-lived symptoms that require high THC amounts. It can get cost prohibitive. By doing your own edibles, Chef Pete, it definitely gets a lot more affordable, doesn't it?
It really does, and that's basically my secret, and I love to share what I know. I'm really not in any competition with anyone because I do a certain type of product. Imagine Martha Stewart making your edibles for you, higher end, better qualities of chocolate, messing around with like a smoked sea salt sprinkled over a dessert. Like I said, I consider myself the Martha Stewart of cannabis in Little Rock, and like I said, I just want to help people. I just want people to find the relief that I've been able to use.
Well, a couple things when we were talking earlier here, and I agree 100% with you on all this, is the importance of initial flower selection for a particular disease state. We are entourage effect people, right? And the importance of determining an accurate dose, and that is something that is quite difficult to do on the edible side of things. Fortunately, Chef Pete has a lot of experience with it. I understand you're going to be kind of giving people little primers on this in your blog series.
Absolutely, yeah. On Facebook, Chef Pete the Canna Chef. I go into everything from dosing, what is, how much to take, how much not to take. The way that I see cannabis is, for myself, is the goal is to take as little as possible. Be watching for upcoming videos. I'll be doing a process called decarboxylation, and basically we were talking earlier, and that's how you take the raw THCA and you burn off that A so it becomes THC.
Chef Pete, thanks so much for meeting with us today and giving us a little bit of the background on how you became interested in using cannabis as a medication, incorporating it into the edibles. I really look forward to seeing the content you're going to produce here very soon. So next up, we're going to be cooking with Chef Pete the Canna Chef. What are we going to be making today, Chef?
We're going to be making some cannabis oil using coconut oil. I'm going to go over how much to use, what the tablespoon amount of THC and CBD in the product, So that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to be making oil, and with that oil, you can use it in any recipe, whether that be a salad dressing or baked goods, savory, sweet. But I'm really excited about teaching you guys some new stuff.
Well, can't wait to see it here, Chef. We're going to be running that as a separate segment here on Cannabis Expert MD. I think Chef Pete will have it also on his. Let's see, Chef Pete, the Canna Chef. What platforms are you on right now, sir?
Okay, so on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest.
And a YouTube channel I hear coming up soon, right?
A very wise man told me about the YouTube channel, so I'm excited about that.
Well, I can't wait to see what you got coming, Chef. Thanks so much for having us today. Really look forward to seeing what you're making here shortly. For more information on all things medical cannabis, be sure to check us out at CannabisExpertMD.com. We're also available on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Cannabis Expert MD.